Good morning. My name is Mary Fuller. I am the president of Cruise Chicago. I'm also the managing partner of an accounting firm here in Chicago, Shepherd, Schwartz & Harris. I'd like to officially welcome you to our leadership program. Cruise Chicago's mission is to positively impact the commercial real estate industry by advancing the power and success of women. Cruise leadership and professional development programs are offered only to our members. Many of us don't really take care of ourselves, and this is one way of taking care of yourself in a leadership role. I told you I'm a managing partner, and sometimes you have no one to go to, and I really appreciate these kinds of programs because they've helped me develop personally and professionally.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I especially want to thank Cruise Chicago, Sharon, Kathy, and Jerry for having me here, and to you for being here bright and early this morning. Part of the fun of doing a podcast is that I get to be on a tether. So as I'm walking around, and you will be at some point as well, keep in mind that I'm attached to this, and if you're standing on it, I could end up on the floor. So just keep that in mind off the bat. But I want to say, and very sincerely, I would rather be doing this morning than anything else I could do. Levy Restaurants was a fantastic company to work for. As Jerry mentioned, I spent a total of 16 years there, and then this past August transitioned full-time into Harmony Insights so that I could do things like this. And so I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be with you this morning. I am going to pack as much value as I possibly can into the time that we have. I wish we had 4 hours for this. Some of you are going to wish that we had 4 hours for this, but we don't. So I want to make this as valuable a time for you as I can, so that I'm going to rely on you then for that participation and contribution. We're going to do a lot of interacting this morning to get the day going, and I think that that's going to add value to our time together. So are we ready for this? You want to get going? Yeah. All right, excellent. I start out almost all of my workshops with a very simple exercise. I just want you to pick up your pen or pencil and sign your name anywhere you have a place to sign it. And then for the fun part, I want you to take your pen and put it in your other hand and sign your name again. So often in life, we are given a choice to do what comes naturally to us, what we've always done, speak the way we've always spoken, behave the way we've always behaved, connect with people, or not, based on the way that we've always connected, or not. You have a choice to consider thinking outside the box and stepping beyond your comfort zone. And that's one of the best quotes I've heard in recent years, is anything worthwhile that's going to happen to you in life is going to happen just beyond the edge of your comfort zone. That is going to require us, on occasion, to adapt, like we just did. How did it feel to sign your name the first way?
Great.
Great. What else? Describe it. Normal, natural, easy.
Didn't have to think about it.
Didn't have to think about it. Didn't take much time at all, right? So then I did, as life does, came to you and said, I want you to consider doing something a little bit different. Take that pen, put it in your other hand, and sign your name again. What did that feel like?
Awkward.
Awkward is one of the first words that comes up. Why was it awkward?
It was hard.
Hard? It's hard to do. We don't do this every day. Right? What else? Describe it for me.
Didn't look so great.
No, you weren't pleased with the outcome, right?
Required concentration.
Yeah.
Concentration. Raise your hand if you'd be a little embarrassed to show people what you did. Right? That's okay. But unless I missed it, nobody got up and walked out of the room. You did it. You signed your name. So that was a pretty simple task. You said, I don't know what's being asked of me, but I think it's morally and ethically appropriate. I'm going to take a moment to adapt and see where this goes. We have that ability. The question is, do we have the willingness? This morning, we're going to be talking about opportunities as we go through life with loved ones, with professional colleagues, with clients, with people who report to us in some way, to adapt to what people need from us that isn't always going to come naturally to us based on our own personality and communication styles. If we want to be as effective as we can be in whatever we're doing, we'll take the context that we're talking about today in real estate and your professional roles. If we want to be as effective as we can be in adapting and connecting with people and building rapport, the way that we get people to know, like, and trust us so that we can have influence, we need to understand when we have the opportunity to adapt and how we can do so to not only be more effective ourselves, which is what you've already spent some time this year discussing, but for purposes of this class, how we can recognize, identify, and optimize the strengths in other people. And those other people could be clients, they could be colleagues, they could be partners, they could be whomever is the person sitting in front of you in the room. Could be the most important person, the most important key stakeholder that you could possibly be interacting with. That is the person who deserves our attention. If we don't have a sense of what they need from us, we can't possibly begin to optimize, recognize, and optimize that person's strengths and their contributions, which is the theme for this morning's conversation. I could stand up here and all day and talk about this. I want to know from you, though, why do you think it's important? I don't want to tell you why it's important. I want to get from you, based on your experience, why you feel it's important to be able to recognize and optimize the strengths in other people. So let's hear from a couple of volunteers who want to give me their opinion. Yes.
You're only as strong as your team that's behind you, so
I like that. All right. Tell me more about that.
you need to pull, well, in my industry, it's best to have a diverse group of people, whether that's different personalities or various strengths, so to be able to pull everyone's strengths and make the A team is the best.
She already said one of the magic words for today, diverse. Right? How do we define diversity? You know, what does that mean when we are around people who are diverse in some sense? In other words, different from who we are. How can we interact with them? How can we build meaningful rapport and establish relationships? Who else wants to let me know why they think it's important to be able to connect with others and bring out the best in them? Sharon.
Bringing out the best in others helps, and for me, gain personal satisfaction. So having a team that's working well is personally satisfying.
Personal satisfaction. So it's in part for the person to whom we are adapting and getting them to feel respected and that they're contributing the best of what they bring to the table, but it's also somewhat selfish. You know, I feel then more fulfilled and rewarded if I can build a diverse team and interact with them in a way that they feel valued. In the back.
If you are bringing out the best in others, they will likely recognize that you are bringing out the best in them, and they will want to stay.
They will want to stay. So if we're talking in terms of our team, perhaps our employees, or you could talk about clients. Wouldn't it be nice to have a client want to stay with you, just as it is a member of your team? We talk so much about engagement and enablement these days. How do people feel engaged? Well, one way they feel engaged is that they feel that they're listened to, that they're respected, that their strengths are valued by an organization, or, forget the organization, by the person for whom they work or with whom they interact most often. You know, I worked with a realtor a couple of years ago when I purchased my place in the South Loop, and it became very obvious to me very quickly that her ability to adapt to my needs and to encourage me to bring who I was genuinely and authentically to the table was going to benefit her, because I would like her and I would sort of appreciate that connection and want to spend time with this person at the end of the day whom I was paying to help me in my condo search. From a team perspective, you know, if you build that engagement, to your point, people are going to want to stay. So what can we do then to encourage this? So hopefully you each have your own reason for being here, and I would love to be able to talk more about that, but have that in mind as we continue this morning, because that's going to be your why as to why you're here and why this is going to be important for us. A few things I want to make sure that we cover. I want to revisit your own behavioral values and tendencies, but sort of within the context of DISC. And I say revisit because you've already done some work being introspective as leaders, and I want to revisit that briefly, kind of put a DISC context around it. I'm sure you're dying to figure out what those assessments were all about. We're going to spend some time doing that. I want to recognize the diverse strengths and communication styles of others by engaging in activities that have you split up based on your styles, based on the results that you saw from your assessments, and get a sense of what that diversity looks like from a communication and behavioral perspective. And then ultimately give you some specific strategies with key stakeholders in mind that will allow you to walk away today understanding how to, again, recognize and optimize the strengths in the people who matter most to you, to your business, to whatever you're attempting to pursue at this point. Do those seem like worthwhile goals? Just want to make sure. It's good to have buy-in on that, that kind of thing. I mentioned rediscovering our strengths. By a show of hands, who here has read Now Discover Your Strengths or taken the Strengths Finder assessment? All right, so it's a good number of people. That book, in essence, is saying our time is so much better served if we're focused in the areas of our greatest strengths. As a student or as a child, you come home and you have 3 A's and a C. What gets all the attention? The C does. Well, what if instead, and this is the argument that the book makes, what if instead we focused on those areas of our greatest strength, or, to put it within the theme of this morning, the strengths of other people? There are always going to be opportunities for people to be developed. But what if we focused on their greatest areas of contribution? How is that going to make people feel, and what is that going to do for your connection with that person? And these values or these strengths are things that are reinforced from a very early age. So there are some people in the room at a young age that it was reinforced that you were of value first and foremost if you produced, if you achieved. Raise your hands if you identify very strongly with achieving and getting things done. All right? That's a good number of hands in the room. Some people, it's reinforced when they're younger that they're of value if they're liked first and foremost, that they have influence, that they're persuasive, that they're sort of a social being and social entity. Raise your hand if you identify with that. At least sometimes, right? Raise them high, be proud. Some people feel that they're of value and that other people are of value if first and foremost you are cooperative and of assistance to others, that you're of service to other people. Forget about your own needs. You want to be able to serve other people. Raise your hand if you identify with wanting to serve others first and foremost. I'm seeing some of the same hands go up, which is fine because we go back and forth between these values. And then lastly, some people who from an early age feel that they are of value. They're contributing their best if they are right, if they're accurate. Right? And you laugh at that, but that is a struggle for some people.
Right.
When they're not. So raise your hand if you really value accuracy. You're somebody who is, you know what, I want to be right about things. All right? From a very early age, and this child who's looking in the mirror is questioning these things, and then throughout his or her life, those things get reinforced, they get encouraged, they get discouraged, and these behaviors then manifest themselves in all sorts of ways, but certainly in ways that impact our ability to build meaningful relationships with one another and bring out the best in the people around us. It's one thing to go through life knowing yourself, putting your best self out there, but it's quite another then to understand how to connect with people so that the best comes out in them. They're going to like you, they're going to choose to do business with you, they're going to want to stay with your organization, the point that was brought up in the past. You're going to get a sense of satisfaction out of those relationships that you wouldn't if the people around you didn't feel that they were being catered to and accommodated and adapted to in some sense. And that's on us to adapt to others, not make them adapt to us. The best leaders out there are those who almost seamlessly can adapt to whomever is sitting in front of them to bring out the best in that person. The golden rule most of us are going to be familiar with: treat others the way that you would like to be treated, right? We understand morally and ethically what purpose this serves. It begs the question, though, what if the person you're sitting in front of, who is the most important person in your world at that time, does not want to be treated the way that you want to be treated? Does not want to be communicated with in the way that you communicate with the world, doesn't have the same motivations and values. That's a roadblock. That's an obstacle. They wouldn't want to be lied to. You wouldn't want to be lied to. So the golden rule still applies, but this person just does not see their world the way that you do. That is a potential and potentially fatal disconnect if your goal is to bring out the best in that person. Because you're going to look to motivate them and cater to fears that they simply don't have, that you have, right? But so many of us then go through life with blinders on, treating everybody in this sort of cookie-cutter way, where we just make an assumption outside of classes like this. So this is very valuable. Consider yourselves lucky at whatever point you are in your career to be able to have this conversation this morning. So many people go through life with that sort of cookie-cutter approach. They make connections a percentage of the time, but then a larger percentage of the time, they're building unintentional walls that keep them from being as effective as they could be otherwise. So, what do we do about this? The first step is understanding what we bring to the table, and potentially, for purposes of this class, begin to identify those key stakeholders in our world with whom we do need to build meaningful relationships. I want to start off right off the bat, getting one person in mind that is going to be sort of the focal point of our morning together, and is also going to be the same person to whom you return a little bit later to identify specific strategies for enhancing a relationship, okay? I have put out some words at each of your table, different colored cards. The colors don't matter, but they are adjectives that could potentially be used to describe a strength of yours. So what I would like you to do is look through the cards at your table, maybe the table behind you. Choose one card that identifies a strength of yours. I'm well aware that you have so many strengths that it's going to be hard to pick just one, but let's just pick one. All right. Everybody should have one card, one word that you feel best describes you. All right. So let's go from here. Everybody should have one word that you feel best describes the strength of yours in your current role, whatever that role may happen to be. And I want to hear from one or two of you as to the word you chose and why. So who would like to be a brave volunteer?
I would be a volunteer.
Well, fantastic. Let's go with you.
Direct.
Loudly enough for everybody here. Direct, huh? How fitting. Whenever we do this, one of the words is decisive, and for the people who take a little bit longer, I usually say, if you're still choosing decisive is not the word. So why, what is it about being direct that you value, or that you value in other people?
Just because I guess I don't have a lot. I feel as though I want people to just say the way things are, so that I can deal with it, or they can deal with me, versus beating around the bush.
Excellent strength. And so then you appreciate that in other people as well,
Absolutely.
because it probably saves you time,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
How
and
are
I
you,
understand.
how are you with small talk, by the way?
No, I'm not good.
Not so good, huh?
I don't want to hear about your kids.
Hear this? I love that. I love that because she's embracing who she is, right? I'm direct, that's how it is. I want other people, I value being direct in other people. So when somebody walks up and they are direct with you, probably a match made in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. Are there people in this room who get a little nervous around people who are very direct? Raise your hand.
Okay. Too direct, but not. I like direct.
To an extreme, right?
To an extreme. Yeah.
Right.
But I like direct.
The question then becomes, to what extent are the strengths that we have chosen, and I'm going to step on my own tether, to what extent are the strengths that we have chosen potentially going to be obstacles and get in our way in terms of our ability to connect with other people? So if you are too direct, what could that come across as?
People misunderstand you, or they misinterpret.
Sure, right. You call it direct, someone else says intimidating, right? That perception is important. Same with the people who are interacting with us. Now, if I'm working with you and I know that that's a value of yours, I want to put you in positions that allow you to be direct, but then also, if I'm a good leader, put you in positions that will allow you to grow and to understand when you need to take a step back, maybe not be so forthcoming, and listen to people around you, which may not be your natural tendency, right? Who else? I'd love to hear from somebody else. Yeah.
I picked adventuresome
All right.
because there is not a challenge I don't love, and because I value beyond creative. I mean, to me, it's like, forget about thinking outside the box. I think forget that there's a box in the first place, because otherwise you're not going to come up with new and innovative ways to get things done. And sometimes the way that something has always been done is for a reason, because it works, and sometimes you're missing out on tremendous opportunities if you don't try something new and different.
I love that. No, that's great. Do you hear the language she's using? Mm-hmm. Like, that there's no box to begin with. Goodness, I didn't even consider that. That's fantastic. That tells me so much then in just that little bit about what you value, and how potentially, if we were working together going forward, how I might want to connect with you. If I'm building that box around you, and I'm somebody who's sort of regimented about things, and I'm good with rules and guidelines and standards, because that's how I make sense of my environment, and I impress those upon you and force those upon you, that is going to be building an unintentional wall. And I'm sitting here thinking, now wait a minute, what wall? That's what I value. Like these things are strengths of mine. So why then, would they be coming between us? Well, it's because you don't value necessarily the same things at the same time. And so much of what we're going to talk about today is sort of situationally based. How are we behaving with others in very specific situations and environments? You each chose a strength. I would love to, and given more time, I would have you create a strength tag. I'd have you wear this around. Unfortunately, we can't. So that begs the question then, how do we become more capable at understanding what other people need from us so that we can connect with them meaningfully? Before we do that, and by way of sort of that transition, I want you now to select a word that describes a key stakeholder in your world. I'm going to let you define who that person is. Potential client, colleague, someone who reports to you, doesn't matter. Somebody who today, this week, is going to make a big difference in your ability to be successful in your profession. Consider that person and choose a word at your table or at surrounding tables, if you can turn around, that describes that person. Yeah. There's some negotiating going on for cards in here. As long as I don't see any money on the table, we're safe. Okay. One word. Hopefully you've chosen one word now that describes a key stakeholder in your world. By the way, something funny just happened. The woman that was up front that mentioned being direct as a strength of hers was getting up to get coffee, and she said, "I'm not attacking you, I'm just getting coffee." She clearly knew that I was going to be a little wary of our interaction. So, you've now chosen a word that describes a key stakeholder in your world, and what are some of these words? I will hear from anybody at this point.
I'll say it again.
Forceful? You chose. All right, fantastic. So, you don't have to give the identity of this person away, but what are the behaviors or tendencies of this person that encourages you to describe them as forceful?
Well, she has very clear opinions.
Okay. Okay.
One of my strengths is diplomatic. So forceful is certainly with her opinions, and forceful so she can move on to another task at hand.
Okay. All right. And that's good to know. And you're picking that up on. You're picking up on that based on her behavior, how she communicates with you, body language, perhaps. A lot of that is sort of forming that decision in your mind. Somebody else.
Enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic. All right. So how and why have you come to that determination?
Well, this person tends to be enthusiastic, you know. Yeah, well, right. I mean, just, let's see. So, she's bouncy, kind of, jumps around a lot.
Okay. All right.
And tries to get people excited.
All right. She's bouncy. That's fine. She's bouncy.
Finger is bouncy too.
I apologize. I didn't have bouncy among the cards. Next time I'll add bouncy. So we'll go with
this one down, Helen.
we'll go with enthusiastic in the meantime. So you each now have identified a key stakeholder in your world and begun to think about this person's strengths, what he or she brings to the table. And this is going to already so much value to you as you determine how to best to interact with others and bring out their best strengths. Well, DISC comes around and says, all right, well, we want to give you a structure for this conversation. So many assessments out there. There's no right or wrong one to use. You have to choose one along the way. Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment. Raise your hand if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs. That's a good number of people. StrengthsFinder, there are others out there. I happen to do some volunteer work at the Career Transition Center downtown. They use all of these with their clients who are in career transitions. I have gravitated toward DISC because I feel like it's very accessible. I think it produces a report, as we've already heard this morning, that people shake their head at and they think, all right, this is scary. This is how much this is like me, and hopefully a number of you agree with that based on what you've read. But DISC comes along and says, okay, well, we're not going to talk specifically and entirely about personality, or just specifically and entirely about environment, but we're interested in the cross-section of the two. So rather than talking about underlying personality traits that are there regardless of what we're doing and where we are, we each have the ability, in the moment, given a situation, to adapt to whatever is needed of us, and to help others adapt in the same way. And so that's sort of the theme this morning. There are going to be people in general, and this is generalizing because the DISC is specific to a situation, which is why I had you envision your professional role when you answered the questions. There are going to be some people in this room who are more actively paced, some who are more reflectively paced, or moderately paced. Active people tend to embrace change. People who are more reflective tend to embrace consistency. On the other spectrum, some people who are more task-focused, thinking about to-do lists, what needs to get done, achieving, taking risks. Others who are more people-focused. Your day is made by the people with whom you're going to interact during the day, and you're thinking in terms of feelings and emotions as opposed to tasks. At the intersection of each of these things, you get the basis of the DISC model of behavior. The D, or dominant style, is more actively paced and task-focused. The I, or influencing style, is more actively paced and people-focused. S, for steadiness, still people-focused, but more reflective. And C, for conscientious or compliance, is often easier to spell. Reflective or moderately paced, and task-focused. In this one graph or image gives you a sense of the differences between them. D's being active and task-focused, S being people and reflective, but also the commonalities. A couple styles share a pace. A couple styles share a priority. It gives us a sense of not only our differences and the diversity in the room, which we're going to see firsthand in a moment, but where those points of potential connection are. If I know I'm fairly task-focused, but actively paced, I want to get stuff done, I want to move, that dominant style, and you're somebody who's more people-focused, but still energetic, enthusiastic, bouncy, as we've heard this morning, that connection is that we are both actively paced. I'm focused on tasks, you're focused on people. That's fine. That diversity is going to be beneficial to us, certainly as we're building a team, but regardless of our relationship, the nature of our relationship, it helps me to understand our points of commonality, but also our points of difference, and not make you adapt to mine, but instead say, I care enough about you, I respect you enough in your contributions, that I want to bring the best out of you. To do so, I'm going to adapt to your way of seeing the world and your language. All right? So each of you have, most of you, there may be one person in the room, own up to it, who doesn't have an assessment in front of them right now. There may be one person. Okay, perfect. But you've completed the assessment, right? Not yet, but you have the link, and if you don't, I'll make sure that you get that. Everybody else does have an assessment. So if you look on page, I encourage you to read pages 4 and 5, but if you look on page 5, specifically, you will see a graph that looks something like what's up here. And your dot is going to be in one of the 4 quadrants. That is your primary DISC style. We're a mixture of all 4. At any given point during the day, we can choose our behavior. We can choose to behave in any number of the styles. But our goal this morning is to become familiar enough with sort of what we bring to the table, but more importantly, what other people do, that we can talk somewhat fluently about it. So does everybody see where their DISC falls, or their dot in that graph? That's going to be your primary DISC style. That's saying, this is your comfort zone. If you are told to pick up your pen and sign your name, that is your dominant hand. That is going to be the behavior, the communication style that is of least effort to you. It doesn't say anything about anybody else. It says this is how you are going to approach communication and relationships and behaviors. So in this case, the person we would say is a primary I style, that they prefer the influencing style, and then that shading kind of gives you a sense of what the person's comfort zone might be. There's meaning to where the placement of that dot. If that dot is toward the edge of the circle, that behavior is very prominent. If this dot was to the edge of that circle, you see the words, the values around the edge, enthusiasm, collaboration. I wouldn't be able to get a word in edgewise. I would meet this person that's the high, sort of that sales-minded, talkative, expressive, comfortable in the spotlight. They're the life of the party most of the time. I'm going to be able to pick that up early on in our interaction. All right? I know that's just kind of a brief overview, but any questions about what we've talked about so far? Does anyone not know what their primary disc style is? And for the person who has not completed it yet, we've already talked a little about it and will continue to talk more about it, so I would just encourage you, for purposes of this class, just choose which behavior you identify with most, and then we can kind of go from there. All right? So, because you have identified your primary disc style, and some of you are saying, well, I still don't really get this, I don't know exactly what we're talking about, it's going to become clear in a moment, I want to divide up now by those styles and in accordance with those styles. All right? So this is where it gets fun. It gets interactive. I'm going to need people to participate. Hopefully there are a few artists among you because we're going to be drawing. What I want to do, and let's do this also as quickly as possible, just given our limited time this morning, I want to make sure we make the best of it. Take at least your assessment with you. I don't think you're going to need anything else necessarily because we will come back to our seats. So just take your assessment. And anyone who prefers the dominant style, that D style, based on what your assessment is telling you, if that's your primary style is the D style, I would like you gathered around the easel in the far left or the far back corner. If you were the I or influencing style, around this easel in that corner. S or steadiness style up here. C or conscientiousness style around this easel. Okay. So what I would like you to do now, we started out the morning using a very important word, and that's diversity, right? Someone mentioned diversity. So we can look around the room based on how people look. We can, divide people up. A lot of companies put numbers around and quantify ethnic diversity, but diversity is so much more widely defined, obviously. Well, communication behavioral style is another thing that we can look at to get an understanding of the diversity in the room. And now we can see that. We are in different places. My goal is not to label anyone. Our goal in life is not to label people. As we get a better understanding of communication and behavioral style, we don't want to slap a Post-it on anyone's forehead. It's too limiting, right? So we want to understand sort of the natural tendencies and preferences that people bring to a relationship so we can encourage them, so that we can bring them out in people. But we also want to develop people as we go. So you may prefer that dominant style, and I'm going to want to put you in a position where you can bring those strengths to the table. But if I only treat you that way, at some point you're going to say, yeah, I get it. Okay, I prefer the dominant style of behavior. That's the way I communicate. I can do other things. I'm multi-talented. Give me an opportunity to stretch outside of my comfort zone and maybe take a step back and think things through and do a little bit more research than might naturally come to me. And we can say that for all styles. So in the same breath that I'm saying we don't want to label people and divide them up, I'm labeling you and dividing you up. So take that for what it is. But it's to kind of reinforce some of the concepts that we're talking about today. So what I want you to do, using page 7 of your assessment as a cheat sheet, that is going to be the best one-page sort of summary of the 4 styles. I would love you to review that, come up with, identify someone who's going to be your artist in just 5 or so minutes, just given our time this morning. I want you as a group to think about what are the things that we can draw, the objects, the symbols. You can put words up there, but I would prefer objects and symbols that you could draw that are representative of the tendencies of your style. So for example, coming back to that D or dominant style, when it says that you're direct and you're decisive and you're time sensitive and you're competitive, what can you draw then to illustrate those tendencies? Am I making sense?
Kind of.
Kind of.
I'm not good at
Okay. So coming back to that dominant style, if you saw yourselves as competitive, and we're going to have to, again, we're a mix of all 4, so you want to agree on, you might draw a finish line. You might draw a finish line, like a race for a race, right? Or a bullseye or a target for something like that. All right. let's come together now and talk about what we've drawn. So, part of Jerry's introduction, she mentioned that with Harmony Insights, I work with organizations and individuals in different capacity. I help organizations build and grow teams that value diverse communication and personality styles. And when I'm doing those workshops, which can be up to 4 hours, 6 hours if they need it, we are spending a lot more time on these exercises, sort of debriefing them and talking through a lot of the fun stuff that happens. We don't have as much time for that this morning, but it was important to me that we go around and take a look at what each of you have drawn, because it's going to give us some insight into how you think and how you behave and how you approach your world. As we go, keep in mind that key stakeholder that you've already identified. What we're trying to do in this exercise is not only understand a little bit more about ourselves and kind of recap some of the things that you may have already learned through the leadership sessions, but to get a better understanding of what others need from us in order to feel that they are contributing the best of what they bring to the table, all right? So I want to start with the D, or dominant style, over here. So just as sort of a brief overview, that dominant style is very direct and decisive. They love things in bullet points. They're very competitive. They don't want to beat around the bush. They want to get to the heart of the matter. If you come in with a ream of paperwork to show the research you've done, the D's are going to glaze over and say, I know you've done the research. I will ask you if I have any questions. I just need your opinion. I need your bullet points. I don't even need to agree with it. So don't worry about whether or not I agree with it. I just want to know that you have one and you can articulate it in as little time as possible, right? I'm painting a very general picture, and some of you are going to say, well, that doesn't describe me. We're a mixture of all 4 styles, so I understand that. And we are generalizing, but by and large, these are some of the tendencies. So how have those come through in what you've chosen to draw?
Okay, well, we have crossing the finish line being very important. We have winning being very important. Getting things done. Timer. Time is very important. Jumping the chasm and avoiding the alligators. Strength. Finishing things, collecting your stars. Our team makes it to the top, other people don't. There's alligators. Oh, in a gavel. Make a decision, let's move on.
So in the world of that dominant style, not only do you fall off of a mountain, but you get eaten by an alligator. Sure, why not? Why not? I did this exercise with a team once who drew the finish line, and they did finish / start. There's no time for celebration. We're finishing something, we've achieved something, it's on to the next achievement. There's no time to sit and dally. We have things to take care of, right? They value competing, and I won't go into this full story, but I did this workshop once at an arena in Orlando, and one of the guys mentioned he was particularly competitive. He was in the dominant style group. Afterwards, I stuck around, ran a 5K with the group, and I was coming up in our little group of people, sort of. I was coming up to him, and he was the first in our group during this 5K, and I came up behind him, and I remembered in my mind that he had made such a big deal about being competitive and valuing that, and I had a very important decision to make, right? Do I pass him and risk losing this relationship or hindering it in some way, or do I stay behind him? And what do you think my decision was? I stayed behind because I knew for that relationship, I knew what he valued. He wore it on his sleeve. He told me explicitly I needed to maintain that relationship going forward. He passed over the finish line a second or two before I did, turned around, saw that I was there, smiled, shook my hand, but he won. That's all that mattered. And we not only maintain that relationship, but he allows me to tell this story wherever I go. I don't know why. Usually when I say that I let him win, the D's in the group go, oh, seriously? Because the D's would say, nope, got to win at all costs, right? But I recognized in that moment I needed to adapt. I would normally, of course, want to push ahead, but I thought that relationship is more important. Recognizing what he values and giving that to him in a sense, allowing him that was more important than anything else I could do. Okay? We could go on all day about this, but let's give the D's a round of applause for what they've drawn. When we come over to the I, which stands for influencing, people of the influencing style are very people-focused. They're still active like the dominant style. They are great influencers and very persuasive. They get things done by influencing other people, right? And you want to look for that in others. They're going to be gregarious, enthusiastic, bouncy. I love it. I may come back to that once or twice more. And colorful, and and all of these things. So how is that coming through in what you've drawn?
Well, we call it Ines.
Ines, all right.
It's about collaboration, it's about teamwork, it's about influencing with love. And the glass is always full, and it's about happiness.
Okay.
It's about teamwork, it's about having the enthusiasm to just take everybody behind you. Cheerleader.
You got that color, you have that enthusiasm. It is about the team, it's about cheerleading and bringing people along and getting people excited. You recognize that in other people because they are enthusiastic with you. It's in their behavior. It's almost contagious. You know, I could be having a bad day and then I get around a group of eyes. Usually in these workshops, for apparently no reason at all, the eyes will just break out into applause. Is that energy is worn on their sleeve, you know? So we have a commonality of two active styles. D's are very task-focused, let's get stuff done. Alligators and such. On this side, it's more about the team. It's about collaboration, right? So who is on the team, what strengths do they bring, and how can we value those? And through all of the things that you, glass half full, that optimism, talking in terms of love, feeling and emotion, as opposed to thought and tasks, right? Are you getting a sense, these stakeholders that you have in mind, even just after the two styles we've described, are you getting a sense of where they might fall? Raise your hand if your key stakeholder would fall in either the D or the I group. All right? So if this person is a D, you're going to see it in their behavior. Maybe a little bit reserved, but you can tell there's a lot going on. They need to accomplish. They want to move on to the next thing. You need to put them in a position where they can do those things, direct, delegate. Right? They're good at making decisions. They don't need all day. They don't need the small talk. Give them the basic information and let them move on. With the I's, they want that small talk. Don't start your conversation talking about business. Talk about their weekend. Talk about the family that has visited. Don't have the conversation across a desk. Have it side by side. Go out for drinks if you can. I's aren't so concerned about hierarchy like D's might be. I's want to like and be liked and be a social entity. Their office is going to be set up with pictures of them with celebrities. Look at my social status. The D's are saying, forget about the celebrities. Look at my awards. I got trophies. I've done things. I've achieved. So you can pick it up even in the offices. I'm trying to give you a sense of, without being able to have everybody complete an assessment, which we can't, we still need to be able to people read and get an idea of what people value so that we can bring out the best in them. Round of applause for the I's. We come over to the S's. S stands for steadiness. Also people-focused, but now we're on the bottom half of that circle we saw earlier, a little bit more moderately paced. Instead of collaborating for the sake of people being involved, they want to cooperate. They want people to be on the same page. They embrace consistency and are often turned off by change, nervous about change. They're good listeners, very sincere and genuine, and certainly more moderately paced. Might actually wake up with a smile on their face and be happy to interact with people along the way, but it's going to be in a much less energetic than the group in the corner. So how does this come through in what you've drawn?
Well, we're very direct and simple too. We only use one color, and we do like stick figures.
Okay.
I don't know if that's typical of S's, but this is the extent of our ability. But our symbols were for like group diversity. This was different types of people in a team, collaboration. Calm waters, calmness in dealing with situations with an even tone. Here's our enthusiasm. This was hands clapping. This is my biggest challenge. Where we're appreciative of everyone's efforts and skills and abilities. This is an ear where we're listening, so we're big on listening to people's input and taking it into account. Here is a team effort again, where it's like a sports type reference. Here we're questioning, right?
We can't be indecisive.
Oh, yeah, and right, indecisive. So
we'll get there sooner or later, but, you know, we want to question and make sure that we're doing things correctly and on the right path. And this is the no I in teamwork.
And I'm a little confused. Where's your man-eating reptile in all of this?
You go in here.
Okay.
One question we had in our group where you said no change, and all of us, we don't believe that. Because, you know, like we ourselves, we can make change. I mean, I'm for change. I won't just do it just to change.
There you go. That's the difference. You said it perfectly. The D's will say, I will change just for the sake of change. I've worked with entrepreneurs who 3 years into their business, it's going perfectly well, it's successful, they're making a ton of money, they sabotage it because they need it's too routine. They need something different. So the way you said that is perfectly. It's not that you will shy away from it, it's you don't want to change for the sake of change. D's say, if my world stays the same for 5 minutes, I'm going to get nervous. Right? We're generalizing, of course. When I've done this workshop in the past, once it was done where we split up like this, and the D's convinced an S to come do their drawing for them. Showing that the D's delegate so well, and the S's are just happy to be of service. Right? And I talked about the eyes breaking out into applause. I do another exercise where you identify a car and a bumper sticker that's symbolic of your style. I did it once where the D's identified our style is best represented by a Hummer. Driving people off the road, they mounted a laser on the top of it to destroy anything in their way. And their bumper sticker said, if you're not winning, you are dying. If you're not winning, you're dying. What does that say then about the people with whom you're interacting? Somebody in your life is that competitive. Somebody in your life wants so badly to be of service to others before they get their own needs met. How are you recognizing this and catering to people so that they feel then that they are contributing the best of what they bring to the table? If it's a colleague, great. Maybe they bring that diversity to the team that you really need to be successful. They make you look better because you can delegate things to them that are their strengths. If it's a client, how do you understand these things so that you can build that quick rapport, that likability factor, which is so important in our business, right? Round of applause for the S's. C's, conscientious, compliant. They want to be right, they want to be accurate. They see their world as somewhat chaotic, and they're more than happy to institute rules, regulations, standards to make sense of that chaos. They don't feel like D's and I's necessarily that they can just act upon it to change their world. S's and C's are going to establish systems to make sense of what's going on. Sometime potentially in a passive-aggressive sort of way. That could potentially come through. But as I think we're going to see here in a moment, they have a very unique way of establishing that order. So how has that come through in what you've drawn?
Okay. So for our sense of organization and analytics, we've got the grid, the Excel spreadsheet. we're sort of, you know, all about being right and getting it done right. So the A+ paper versus the highly critical side where the test is all wrong and we've got the red pencil out. We don't like slipshod work. This is the bridge that collapsed because it wasn't designed by our engineer. By the way, we're engineers, lawyers, and accountants, in case you haven't guessed. This is our library, our value of quiet, and sort of the isolation, which is more, we need a certain, more solitude than those people across the room. Not so much that we don't like you. These are also standards, QC, ISO 9000, and I forgot what this was.
Screaming.
Oh, screaming.
No,
yeah.
No screaming.
We need quiet.
And you know, the people we don't have much tolerance for.
Yeah, we've got people falling off a cliff, because that's like fears. And then we had the 100 emoji, the red one, but then we crossed it out because that wasn't good enough, and we want 105.
Cheaters.
Can you tell that we're back on the task-focused side of the room? People, now we're back to tasks, and it comes through. That spreadsheet always comes up. You know, I value that, or I appreciate that you mentioned slipshod methods. The testing, so much that's on there gives you a sense, and then they say, oh, we're all in engineering and accounting. You know, there's a reason why that personality style is drawn to that line of work, because you have to be very exacting and precise and have not only high standards for yourself, but of other people. And C's are very much aware of that. When I've done this, again, this in the past, this activity in a workshop, I look over at the C's, and on occasion, they all have their iPhones out so that they know that what they're drawing is exactly how it should be drawn. Somebody did that, right? So then when somebody's on your team and you have the sense that they value accuracy and they work for a week on a project and they come to you and they put it down and their title page has a spelling error on it, and that's the first thing you point out, what's that going to do? Right? That is so much, as a C, potentially that's so much a part of who I am and how I value what I bring to the world, that you're sort of, you know, just in passing comment about an error in something that I've done reflects on me so much that I might not be able to sleep.
If they were a true C, they wouldn't have presented it with an error.
No, right. If they're a true C, there would be no error. But I know that high C style that will get halfway through an article or a book and see a typo and have to put it down because they can't, it's too much of a distraction and it reflects too much on the competence of the person writing it. Yeah.
Left brain.
So that's a little controversial because there's.
We would be the left brain guys, we would be the right brain guys, kind of, sort of.
There's an argument to be made. I don't know that there's a strong correlation. And actually now that there's research coming out that left-right brain thing doesn't hold water the way that it has in the past. So I don't want to get in over my head. We can talk about it afterwards, though. That's an interesting potential correlation. But you know, coming back to the C's, then if you know that they value being right, then how you interact with them is, just as with any other style here, is going to be so important. So a round of applause for the C's. Thank you very much. All right, everybody can return now back to your seats, and we will continue. Just be careful with all this business here. All right. So, like I mentioned, we can't have everybody with whom we interact complete an assessment, so we have to get better at people reading, at understanding what people need from us based on their behavior and their environment. Up in front of us, we see, raise your hand if your office looks like this. People's behavior and their environment can give you all of the clues that you need to figure out what they value. If you walk into someone's office and they have nice, neat piles, and they have that very obvious order, things are color-coded, that could be somebody who prefers that S style of behavior, who's very systematic and organized in their world. If you walk in, you see trophies and awards around. We talked about that earlier. Who could that be? That could be that dominant style who values achievement. If somebody has pictures, they're of celebrities, might be the I style. If the pictures are of family, kids in soccer uniforms, people who are very near and dear to them, that might be that S or steadiness style. If I walk up to you and I'm looking at you in the eye and I have a firm handshake and I spend the first 5 minutes of our conversation doing all the talking, I might be an I style, right? Because it's that energy, it's that expressiveness. If I am smiling but I don't have as much to say, I'm a little laid back, I'm a good listener, what do you think? Yes. Good. See, you're picking this up. I knew it. So people are giving us all the clues that we need in order to understand how to interact with them and to encourage what they value in their contributions. Your assessment is 20 pages. I only had you look at a couple, and I won't even have you turn to it now. But after this, because this is a really valuable tool to take with you, pages 12 through 15 are going to give you very specific strategies on how to increase your effectiveness, given your own disc style, with other styles. So I would encourage you to go back, look through it, take notes as you go, personalize your assessment, but certainly look at pages 12 through 15 to get very tactful and strategic about how you can adapt to bring out the best in other people. Okay? But now I want to do something that's really important. I think it would be silly to talk about DISC and kind of set this all up and not come back to those key stakeholders that you have in mind. So what I would like you to do in the time that we have left, and I will, I'll give you probably about 5 minutes for this and then 5 minutes for us to wrap up. I want you to have a conversation in pairs where you take turns describing the key stakeholder that you had in mind earlier during the session. I want you also then to open your trifold handout that you were given. There's an area in that handout, I believe it is the right side, lower right side, that gives you the opportunity to name the person if you so choose. Your goal now in pairing up is to talk about your key stakeholder and discuss ideas for ways that you can identify what they might value based on their behavior and adapt to meet that person's needs to bring out the best in them. So for example, if you are that D or dominant style, which we keep coming back to, and you're interacting with somebody who is S or steadiness style, those are at opposite ends of the spectrum. You embrace change, they embrace consistency. You're very direct and actively paced. They're a little less direct and a little bit more moderately paced. When you've considered the style that your key stakeholder might be, give some thought and some conversation to what you might need to do to cater to that person going forward so that you're building a more meaningful relationship, so that you're encouraging this person to bring the best of their strengths to your relationship. Again, it could be a client, a colleague, it doesn't matter, but whomever you happen to have in mind, I want you to put some thought now around how you can use what you've learned so far today to enhance any outcome you may have in mind with that particular person. You have a question?
In a two-person relationship, is it more likely to be successful if they come from different colors?
She said in a two-person relationship, is that relationship more likely to be successful if people come from different colors or different styles? Not necessarily. On teams, I would say the more diverse the team in general, that's going to be a good thing. In terms of just a one-on-one relationship, it depends on the nature of the relationship. You know, if this is somebody who's buying from you and they are the same style that you are, that may be a match made in heaven. You may not have to beat around the bush too much because you both speak the same language. If somebody is of a different style than you, there may be a little bit more adapting that needs to happen, like picking up that pen and signing with your non-dominant hand. It's still possible. What's important is that you recognize when you need to speak with somebody a little bit differently than might come naturally to you. All right? Pair up for the next 5 minutes. Let's have this conversation with your goal of having something very tactful and strategic to take with you. All right. Let me have everybody's attention, please. We just got a conversation started that I want you to be able to continue. And in order to do that, I want to build in explicitly a time to connect back with one another. So identify, either now if you're able to, or make a promise that you're going to get in touch with each other. Identify a date within the next 2 weeks that you are going to follow up with one another to hold each other accountable to some of the things that you talked about. How is it going? How have you been able to adapt? What are you doing to bring out the best in the person that we talked about? So identify a date if you can, or at least commit to following up with one another after this morning's class. Okay. And if you haven't been able to pick a date, we're about to wrap up, so certainly, immediately following the class, you can continue to talk about what that date might look like. But I think it's important then to come back and hold one another accountable and follow up and say, what have you learned? What did you learn in putting to use the things that we spoke about this morning? We began earlier discussing the golden rule, which says treat other people the way that you would like to be treated. Along the way, someone coined the platinum rule. And again, it's not saying that the golden rule doesn't hold, but the platinum rule says treat people the way that they would like to be treated. If you don't remember anything else from this presentation, and I hope you remember much from this presentation, take this with you. This is so fundamental to what we have talked about, that when you are treating people the way that they want to be treated, as opposed to consistent with what you value, and how you are motivated and what your fears are, you are communicating respect for that person, and at the end of the day, able to be so much more productive and effective as a leader than you would be if you didn't consider that different people may want to be treated differently. So we've accomplished a number of things today, and I was happy to fill it all in. We agreed on the value of identifying and optimizing strengths and talents of other people. You reflected on your own tendencies and preferences. You can't really have the confidence to do too much in life until you first know how you are uniquely wired. Well, you did a lot of that work already. I just wanted to come back from a DISC perspective. You identified some key stakeholders in your world. We reviewed DISC together. You observed by looking around the room diversity in strength and style of other people. Everyone you pass has a different story. They may be similar to you in some ways, but they may also be different. And what does it feel like then? What could it mean to you and your business if you embraced the differences and that diversity around you? And we discussed specific strategies for enhancing outcomes with key stakeholders in the pairing up that you've just done. The real question is, and I love this graphic, in their separate bowls, these fish can see each other. They can wave, do whatever they do with their fins to acknowledge each other. But it's not until one decides to jump into the other bowl, put him or herself in the other person's shoes, that they really begin to communicate. We go through life interacting with people from afar. They could be a foot in front of you, but we're not bridging that gap necessarily. What if, from this day forward, we began to connect with people in a meaningful way, speaking the language that they speak? Raise your hand if you've traveled outside the country to a place where they speak a different language. I sing with a couple of classical choirs in the city. I went to Europe for my first time a few years ago, and I realized very quickly that two things happen if I learn at least the basics of the local language. I communicate respect for the people rather than expecting that they all speak English, and I get what I want a little bit sooner, even if it's just water for my table. DISC language is the exact same. If you take the time to adapt to other people's language, how they view the world, their preferred communication style, you communicate respect for that person, you engage them, you allow them or encourage them to stay with your company, you encourage them to remain with you as a client, but they feel valued, and you establish sort of that likability factor and meaningful, genuine, sincere rapport in a way that you wouldn't if you said, all right, you know what, I don't want to take that time, things have been fine the way that they've been, I'm going to do things the way that I've always done them. And if you were to turn around, you might recognize that there's a trail of bodies behind you, perhaps who have fallen off the mountain and been eaten by an alligator, where that bridge was never gapped. That gap was never bridged, we'll put it that way, right? Where you thought it went fine, you contributed the best of what you had to contribute, but you never took a moment to realize that the person with whom you were speaking, the most important person in the room or to your business or in your life at that point, could be a significant other, could be a client, again, a colleague, they needed something just a little bit different. And all it took is you being willing to adapt what comes naturally to you in the moment, pick up that pen with your non-dominant hand, and sign your name once again. I want you to get a sense of, we don't have to have sort of in the time we have left, have people volunteer, but leave with a sense of, an idea of what you are going to do specifically going forward that is going to be different than anything you've done up until this day to become more effective in how you build meaningful rapport with others, have them feel valued, optimize and recognize their strengths now that you have such a solid understanding, having been through these sections, of what you bring to the table. I would certainly welcome any opportunity to help you with that. As I mentioned at the beginning, I work with organizations. I do workshops like this all the time. It's my favorite thing to do. Hopefully you can tell. But I also work with people one-on-one to help them optimize their relationships, be more effective in their professional roles. And I would be happy to play that part with you as well. At the very least, I want to thank you for being such a great audience, for participating like you have, and for your time this morning. And please, let's stay in touch if we have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you to everybody here. Eric, I personally have learned a great deal today. I'm not going to be as bouncy as I normally am. But I'm also understanding that I need to be calm and consistent when I deal with Mary and Kate and Lisa and other people in this corner, the S's. And I think this has been extremely useful because I've gotten some real tangible steps to take in dealing with my key stakeholders. As an example, I want to let you know that Robin Reich and I have worked together in member services for how many years? Maybe 6 years or so?
Probably, yeah.
And we are exact opposites, but we work together well. And if you look at us on the dimension, our dots are, just 180 degrees, but we can work together effectively. So I thought that was an important insight today. And the key message that you wanted to leave with us, Eric, today was make sure you treat others as they would like to be treated. I think that platinum rule is really worth the value of coming here. And if we look and use our wonderful profile, we understand ourselves better, and we can apply those learnings to the relationships that are most important in our lives. So for that, I'm most grateful.